Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. On behalf of Asian American Advisory Council, I just want to welcome all of you to today's institute. So we ran this for the last 12 years, and I just want to thank everybody who actually worked so hard for all these years to move this council. And I just want all the board members now to stand up, so just to recognize, and I just want to thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me here today. More importantly, thank you for your work. I've had the opportunity in my first 4 weeks to really talk to a lot of people and really look into the work and to look into the things that you're doing day to day. And I want to start with thank you. Sometimes I don't think we hear that enough. I don't think that there's enough acknowledgement about how hard everybody works and about how good we are at our job. That's not to say that there aren't issues that we have to work on. That's not to say that there aren't issues that we have to get better at. And not to say that I'm not going to be challenging you every day, along with myself, to be the best that we can be. But there's excellence in the field. I talk to foster parents, I've talked to our kids, and they've made it clear to me that we have improved and at some point saved their lives. And I want everybody to remember that, because I will. As I came into my new role and just feel blessed by it and excited about the opportunity, one of the things that I faced as I walked in was the tragedy of losing one of our little ones. And I took some very aggressive questions from a lot of people. And as I would walk away from podiums and stands or individual meetings, people would go, "Oh, my goodness, I know that's hard." And my response to that is, yes. But it's a heartbreaking thing to lose a child. So I expect that the people who respond to that and who are reading about it and who are sending me emails, they're doing it because they care. I receive it in that spirit. But I work on it in the spirit of we need to be better. I work on it in the spirit that we can be better. We review cases, not to punish. We review cases to learn and grow. The first question that we are going to continue to ask when we walk up on the tragedy is, are you okay? Because I know, outside of the families, nobody's impacted at a deeper level than the staff who are working on those cases. And we are here to support you all the time. Every minute of every day, I am focused on the idea of how do we help you get better so you can make sure our families get what they need. But I'm not alone. Because I wasn't sure what it was going to be like meeting with the legislators. But it's been very positive. They asked me, what can we do to help? You're taking on the hardest job in the state. I say, I had the hardest job in the state when I was an investigator, when I was a caseworker. I have the biggest privilege in the state in leading our investigators and our caseworkers and the team that supports them. But when they asked me what they could do to help, especially in my first few weeks, most of my response was, thank you for everything you're doing now. But if you got a little more money for us, we could probably figure out a way to use it in an effective, helpful way. But I wasn't optimistic. I thought maybe that's planting the seeds for next year. And then the governor's office called us one day when we were at a meeting. And I was sitting next to our CFO, Royce Kilpatrick. I hope some of you know him. And Royce had a huge smile on his face as he was reading his email. And there was a request. If you could get more money, what would you do with it? You got 24 hours to send us a request. He was shocked, because he said he has never received that message before after we submitted a budget. So in 12 hours, we submitted a new request. Submitted it. We thought about priorities we have for the state. We thought about our partners in the private sector who hadn't had an increase in years. We thought about how many of us need support in the field with additional staff members. We thought about what additional clinical services do we need throughout the state. We thought about how hard it is to find appropriate, therapeutic, thoughtful placements for our high acuity kids. And we added it all to our new request. I said, now we got it. Submitted it to the governor's office, and a couple of weeks later, we got it back. It was cut in half. And I reached my hand out and I said, deal, we'll take it. So when I say that our government has, our legislators and the governor have been supportive, they put their money where their mouth is. I'll take that every day. Because we're a team in this. And these kids are not DCFS kids. They're state of Illinois kids. We all have a responsibility. I reached out to some of our community partners. I had a visit at a facility that wants to provide us with some support with emergency shelter beds. And so I got to walk around and see their facility way down in Southern Illinois. That was one of the things. I just came back from a Southern Illinois road trip. And it was beautiful. Painted, lovely, beds, cribs, diapers, every beautiful thing that you can imagine. And they were very proud. And I was really impressed how clean everything is downstate. And it occurred to me that's because I was visiting. They probably did some prep. But what I found was that they really had a nice setup. And I was very appreciative. And then I said, so who are the kids that you're planning on taking in? They said, Director, we're going to take in girls. We're building out 5 beds for teenage girls. And these are the things we have for them, and they're going to have teddy bears and clothing. I said, talk to me about your clinical services. Because I appreciate nice things. And I appreciate beautiful beds and every other comfort level that they need. But I need my kids cared for. And their clinician smiled. And she said, oh, I'm ready. I said, we got these girls coming in, are victims of human trafficking. We're not mincing words no more. And you don't get to pick and choose what kind of kids you want to bring in. These are the kids we got. These are the kids that we need to support and nurture. And I need your systems to address it. And she talked about what she was going to do, and I was pleased. Because they were ready. People are ready to accept the challenge. And then I looked around and I said, well, in my previous experience with the shelter system, especially girls in this situation, but boys too, there are wolves at the gate. They're waiting outside, and they ain't playing. Because I have a specific example of young men with their cars waiting outside to get these girls to run out of these buildings. I said, what are you going to do about that? And they pointed to their security cameras. And then they showed me the room where they do their monitoring. I said, where's the person who monitors? Well, you know, she's not here right now, but if something happens, we need a solid plan. And they said yes. I challenged them to be the best that they can be. I challenge you to be the best that you can be. And I promise you that I'm going to do the best that I can. So I'm not going to keep talking, but I just wanted everybody to know that I really appreciate everything you do. I'm so glad that I was able to come today. We were able to get out a little early from that trip, and we got in late last night, but I really wanted to be here and to support you and let you know how much we appreciate all the hard work that you do. So thank you very much.
So now we're going to get started with a conversation with our state legislators. Prior to introducing them, I also just want to let everybody know that this portion of our program is interactive. So our council members are going to hand out index cards, and if you have questions you would like to ask legislators, please write down the questions and put the name of the legislator that you would like to answer the question, and then a council member will come around to collect them. Now, as I introduce our legislators, please hold your applause until all of them have been introduced. We have State Representative Teresa Ma from the 2nd District. She's the first Asian American state legislator. She represents the 2nd District in Chicago, which includes Back of the Yards, Bridgeport, Brighton Park, Chinatown, McKinley Park, and Pilsen. We have State Senator Ram Vilivalam. He's the first Asian American state senator and is from the 8th District, which is where we are now. It consists of Forest Glen, North Park, West Ridge, and Park Ridge, Morton Grove, Niles, Lincolnwood, and Skokie. We also have State Representative Sarah Feigenholtz from the 12th District, which includes the neighborhoods of Lakeview, Lincoln Park, and Muir North. She also chairs the Legislative Caucus to Reform DCFS. And last but not least, we have State Representative Delia Ramirez from the 4th District. The 4th District includes East Humboldt Park, Hermosa, Bucktown, Westtown, Ukrainian Village, East Village, and Logan Square. Representative Ramirez is also on the Legislative Caucus to Reform DCFS, so if we could give them a warm welcome, please. So the questions are divided into two. So we're gonna start with questions for State Senator Ram Vilivalam and State Representative Teresa Ma. So our first question is, can you describe your background to us and what made you decide to pursue a political career?
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for having us here. It's great to be here. And the short story that I'll say is, we had an inauguration reception, and my brother's a doctor. My sister went to Brown University. She had her master's in education. And so at this inauguration reception, I said, if you're standing next to my mom, she's probably proud. First Asian American elected to the state Senate, first Indian American, one of the youngest. But he's not a doctor. And so to just give you a sense of, this was kind of a new idea, a new career path for people in my community, and it was a little hard for them to get used to at first, my parents especially, but they went along for the ride. And for me, again, it just goes back to the struggle that I saw them face, our community face, and making sure that we have a seat at the table. And that's what I'm trying to do every single day in this job.
I guess we're not using the mic today, but hopefully you can hear me. I'm State Representative Teresa Ma. I'm also from an immigrant family. I grew up in San Francisco. My parents came to the United States in the late 60s, and before that my grandfather had immigrated to San Francisco in 1924, which was at the height of the Chinese Exclusion Act, when Chinese immigrants were not permitted to immigrate to the United States. Nonetheless, he came along with many of his countrymen, and they were here. They were not authorized to be here. They came with false identities, and they lived in the shadows, but at the same time they contributed to the economy of this country. And so I started my career, also not having any idea that I would eventually run for public office, but I started my career as a college professor so that I could do more research and recover that history of immigrant communities that contribute to this country but are left out of our history books. When I eventually settled back in Illinois, after several years away. I had come here for graduate school and gone to teach somewhere else. I came back and I lived in, my current district where I serve, and I was working in the community trying to advocate for more resources and recognition of community members, but we didn't have any Asian Americans at the state, in the General Assembly at the time. And I realized that unless you have a seat at the table, it's very difficult to get the resources and the recognition and the power that the community deserves. And so when an opportunity arose, I took it and decided to run for office. And when I did, I became the first Asian American to serve in the General Assembly. And to me, that was significant because I represent a community it's very diverse, and it includes a large portion of Asian Americans. I wanted to make sure that the community had a voice, but I don't just represent the Asian Americans in the community. I represent a majority Latino community, and it's also predominantly immigrant. And so, I feel a responsibility to make sure that everyone in my district has a voice in state government.
First of all, I'm adopted. For all of you who don't know, I think everybody probably knows that. And I've been in the legislature a long time. And there was a time when we had a special committee on adoption reform, where we passed a bill to take commercialization out of adoption and make it a charitable effort so that people were not making a profit on placing children in loving homes. That was done, I believe, in 2005 after the horrendous Baby Tamia case happened. Does everyone remember Baby Tamia? Maybe everybody in this room is a lot younger, so maybe you were in grammar school. Baby Tamia was a situation where a birth mother got on a plane. I believe she gave birth in Utah, and she signed her relinquishment papers in a hotel in Utah, and the witness was one of the housekeepers. And she came back, and she had postpartum depression, and her mother went to court with a lawyer to get the child back. And we realized that the core reason that this was happening was because there was a profit motive, not a best interest of the child placement. I'm sure, and although this is about adoption and not necessarily about children and the child welfare system, from the lens of the outside looking in, this is child welfare and adoption should be the holy grail. This is whether it's how much money we put in our budget or how we treat children is a reflection of everything. It says everything about us. So my personal experience with adoption and what it was like growing up with a stigma in the 60s and 70s. My birth mother came from New Jersey to Illinois. She came to the cradle, and she asked the people at the cradle where I was going to go, who was going to adopt me, and the cradle told her that that was not her business, and that she couldn't know that, and she left. And she went and lived with a girlfriend of hers, trying to figure out what her next step was going to be. And she walked into the Board of Health around the corner from where I live now. And in that Board of Health was a doctor who was about 4'9", who took care of her while she was pregnant. And my birth mother discovered that this woman had just adopted a baby boy. And as they got to know each other, my birth mother asked her to adopt me. And that doctor delivered me and adopted me. So this was, are you ready? This was 1956. So I grew up in a very progressive environment with some miraculous things that happened, because unfortunately a lot of birth mothers didn't have that luxury. My story is also the story of many adopted adults in this state and children who are in the child welfare system. Unfortunately, not all adoptions turn out the way, and not all children turn out and have great outcomes. But one of the things that I do relate to is the trauma and the ACEs that a lot of the children who are in the system go through, and how we really do have to take a look at the services we provide for them, which is why we now have another adoption and child welfare committee, because I feel as though this is an agency that is, amongst all the human service agencies, is the forgotten agency, and that buried under mental health and Medicaid. This was always the agency that got the least attention and the least help, and I felt that we were at a tipping point with all of the revolving door with the directors. I'm sure all of you really felt this, and I'm so delighted now that there is a director who will hopefully, we're hoping your hair will turn gray in this job, and that you'll stick around.
Migration from the city of Chicago, right, is really making an impact across the state of Illinois, and the resources that we're providing to children and families who do not speak Spanish, do not speak English, and speak other languages, Spanish and other languages. I think that's one of them for me. I think the other is the way that we engage and we partner with the subcontracted agencies, the way that we support them and we partner with them, and we also hold them accountable. I think to me those two are extremely important. I'm going to let Representative Fagan-Holmes give another three, I think, but the other is the hotline. The way that the hotline is managed, the way that we're making determinations, how quickly the calls are coming back, how we are determining if there is a crisis or not. And I think there's so much we could say about the hotline. So I think those three, right, are going to be incredibly important, particularly for me. And yes, you'll probably hear me talk about consent decrees, and we've recently talked about in the news just the impact of parents who are trying to communicate with staff that don't have the ability to communicate with the families because of language, because of culture, because of competence. So these are three things that I'm constantly thinking about. And I'm going to add one more, and then I'll stop. It's training and support of staff across the board. Training can't happen without support, and support without training. So I think that's going to be incredibly important, particularly as we look at the different units within the agency and the consistency of support from the supervisor to the staff. So those are a few that I'm thinking about.
Priorities and vision are important. And so I wanted to speak for a second on what my vision is. I've had that question asked to me a number of times in the past few weeks. Director or Mark, what is your vision? What's your priority? I have a very pinpointed answer to that question. My vision is safety. Every decision that we make, every decision that we will make, starts and ends with safety. Every time an investigator walks out of the home of a family we engage, the last question they should ask themselves is this child safe? If they aren't sure, they don't leave. They call their supervisor and make sure that they feel that what they have done is the best they can do to ensure a child is safe. Every time a licensing specialist walks out of a daycare center or a foster home, the last question they should ask, are the children we're caring for safe in this environment? Every time a case manager for foster care leaves a foster home or prepares to make the most critical decision to send a child back to their family, their question has to be, will this child be safe when I walk out this door? When our partners who do the work with intact families, frankly, our most critical point, every day they should ask the question, are these children safe? Everybody in the contract unit, every contract that comes across their desk should speak to safety. No one is immune in our system to thinking about that every day. So I was saying this yesterday, and I had a room full of private sector providers, and since I was down in the southern part of the state, they took it as an opportunity. We hoped that we would have a lot of workers and supervisors in the room. But the truth was I had a bunch of CEOs and CFOs, but we had one worker in the room. And as we were talking about what we were looking for and what our plans were, I pointed her out a number of times because I wanted everybody to focus on who we need to be supporting. But this young lady said something that rang true. She said, I was in a home earlier this week and I wasn't sure if the family was safe. So she was going back and forth with the idea, should she call child protection and start the process of taking protective custody? And she said she had pause. And the pause was based on our data run. Now we've heard that before. We saw it in our Chapin Hall report. We've had leaders talk about that. But this young lady said it. She said that she was impacting a decision on safety based on not wanting to have too many kids come into care. I told her, you never make a decision based on data. You always make a decision based on what's best for the child in front of you. And I said, if anybody ever pushes back on you on that, you tell them I said it and they can call me. Every time we engage with a family, safety is our business. And we're going to work hard to do that. And I know that's not a fancy vision statement. Because I did go to the internet and see, okay, I write up a vision statement. I said, I can't mess around. I need us to understand. And I need our partners to understand that's the way we're going to do business. So all of these ideas that you have, they feed into this work. I respect them and I appreciate them. And frankly, we're on the same page in a lot of ways. But safety is the work that we do. And I like everybody around this room to make sure that when you start talking to your peers and they start saying, oh, what's Director Smith doing up there? That you say that he's trying to make our kids safer. And I ask you to trust me that every decision that I make is going to be around making those decisions better. Thank you.
Okay, you were in human trafficking. What did you think?
It was a very good training. Talked about the whole issue.
Is it a good thing?
It is a very good thing, but it's a bad thing that's happening. But the training was really good.
And this was very informative. They have a lot of free programs available throughout the Chicago line.
Human trafficking in the culture of context of Asian American culture.
Which one did you like and why?
You know, this was very informative, so I really enjoyed this one.
You were in the human trafficking. What did you think about it?
I thought it was informational. I'm glad to see that they're going to have more updated training to address the issues. I know we've had training in the past, but this is this is hopefully a different look, a fresh look.
And you were glad you had something like this to go to?
Yes, this was very nice.
Well, I went to both. They both were equally as good. Human trafficking and cyberbullying. Yeah. Very informative. I think very important to the work that we do. So I really see some really applicable things that we can look for and things that we can do to better serve our families and help protect the children.
I have attended the workshop, Awareness on Mental Health and Actionable Tools to Make Informed Choices. That was well organized workshop. The presenter has mentioned why the Southeastern Asian men or women have a fear of admit they have mental health issues. It was very informative and a well-organized event, presentation. I enjoyed attending it.
I attended cyberbullying. It's something that all parents, including myself, need to know, and I'm glad that the department is going to become aware of it. By having this class, I think the people who attended will certainly dispense the information to others. The second was awareness in mental health. There's a lot of free mental health services out there, and you can come in and without having to worry about the financial costs. It's certainly something we can give to our parents.
I attended the cyberbullying talk, and it was very informative. I'm not a caseworker with DCFS, but I'm a mom, and so I found it very helpful as my preteen is going in to know what I need to look out for.